This time, we are going to do a couple minutes worth of cleanup, which always goes a little longer than what I expect. What we're going to do is eliminate the author image and the author name. The Newscatcher API, from what I was looking at, is not consistent with actually having author names come back. So we're not going to mess with that. I think we're just going to get rid of those. And then also what we want to do is we do want to add in the published date of the actual article, because currently it's just giving us the published date of current date when we put it in the system. So let's go ahead, and I guess I'll give a little bit of an overview of the other things we're going to do. The Newscatcher API has topics. I think I had shown this early on. We are going to use those topics to do article searches, and we are going to have those topics show up where the Webflow has categories, which means we are going to add those topics in place of these, because there are specific topics that exist for the Newscatcher API. So those are some of the things we are going to take care of in this video. So let's start off with the publish date. Let's see what we have in our blog post schema. Okay. So we're going to want to add a date that we show there, because we do not have a date, which means right now the date being shown is probably just the actual create date of the blog post in Webflow, which isn't representative. Let me go and find that. So if we look in Webflow at this thumbnail, get text from, yeah, so it's using the created on. And what we're going to do is we are going to create a new field. So let's just go ahead and get rolling with this. We need an additional field, and we want it to be a date time, original, publish date. So we're going to save that field, and then I'm going to go back in. Let's save changes. I want to go into the actual blog post, and we'll pick one of the ones we have. And why don't we come down here and actually put a date in there and save that. And the reason I'm doing that is I want to make sure, and I'm going to publish it. I want to make sure that that field comes back, and I want to see how Webflow named it so that we know how to correctly update it from our Xano API. We'll get this published, and while it's publishing, I'm going to come back to Xano. We want to look at our functions, and we want to get blog posts. So I'm pretty sure, it's been a little while since I've run this one. If I just run it, I should get them back, and I did. And at the bottom here, maybe they're in alphabetical, I don't know. There it is. So we will be using the original publish date, hyphenated, and all lowercase to pass in a date. And it looks like that might be in ISO 8601 format. So I'm just going to take a chance that I get that right. And we're going to come back out to our functions for add blog post. In a query, let's see, do we have that saved? So the query all records is bringing back ID article created at. And I think what we are going to need is in the news article table. The created at field is from when we got the article from Newscatcher. So I'm going to have a, we'll name it the same, original published date. Option, let's see, I think we're good with all that. And you don't have to move your created every time, but I tend to. And so the thought would be when we get new articles, we want to be able to put the publish date of the article. The Webflow add blog post. So I'm going to go back here. We're going to make sure that our get articles has, that's right, we're putting the JSON in there in total. And so at the time that we put the article JSON in, I also want to pull out the item published date, which means to do that, I need to know the name of that field in the Newscatcher API, which is this JSON. And published date. And it looks like that'll be a friendly field for date, but we are going to find out. So we've got a timestamp type. We want item dot publish date. So if I run get articles again with the publish date, let's see if our database, close this, see if our database when we refresh this page has that info, and it does. I'm going to get rid of what is now old data because it doesn't have that date and it's really not important to fix that. So yeah, these aren't all today. Look, they were created today and these were when they were originally published. So we're going to be passing this date into the add blog post API. So let's go ahead and do that. Going to, in the add blog post, see what we're doing here. Oh, I have this one commented out, or should. This one is no longer needed because we're querying all the records and then looping through and doing it down here. So I think I mentioned in my last video that we were going to delete that. And so now we will. Okay. So for this function, Webflow.add blog post, this is what's adding it to Webflow. And what we're doing, just as a quick reminder, is we're doing a query for all the records in our news article table in Xano. And it is ID article, our new field, original published date, and then just the created at of when it was created in Xano. So we're getting that and putting it in news list. And then we're looping through news list for each item. And we're calling the API to add this into Webflow. So what I need to do is add a new field, which will be original published date. Let me just go through here so I make sure. Okay. So, pardon me. So what we've got is the fields we're setting up for the Webflow API. I'm going to go back into that higher section. I'm going to scroll to the bottom and I'm going to use the add filter to go ahead and do a set for original published date. And I want to use item, and I think I called it the same. I use them, we'll have to see now. If it's underscores or dashes, let's go back to our table. Yeah, original underscore published underscore date. So I'm using the item.original published date. Okay. So at this point, I have articles that I've retrieved that have that value. I have added that capability into the loop for the external API request for the add blog post down at the bottom here. And then over in Webflow, I've published successfully, which means that the change I made to blog post means we will see an original, I'm glad I looked at this, original publish date. So I need to change that because it is going to be just when I'm keeping everything consistent, and then I have that little flaw, but we're going to leave it. Original publish date. Hold on. Published stays there. There. That should get us a successful call. So let's go ahead and run this and see if I can pull this off. It's running. If we go into the debugger, okay. Let's see if the external API request is giving us a good response. We'll click on that. Okay, I thought I clicked on it. Might be quicker just to go look at Webflow. We got something goofy going on here. That one's working. There we go. Don't know what was up, but look at our response. Oh, I get a lot of 400s when I try to do this, don't I? It is going to be original published date, expected value to be a date. Oh, got it. Okay, so what you see here is that Xano stores dates in a Unix format, and a Unix format represents number of seconds since January 1st, 1970. It's just a programming thing. It's been around for a long time, and it's a good way to store a date in a very consistent fashion. But what we need to pass into Webflow is a structured date, very similar to what we'd seen a little earlier in the video, something equivalent to an ISO 8601. And so I'm going to show you how to do that format of what is the internally stored date structure of the Unix fashion. We're going to go all the way back down to the bottom here. And we want this value. We're going to add a filter to the published for what we're getting out of our database. And we're going to pick format timestamp. And I think a C. This is a format type. So once again, from the programming world, there's some cryptic text representations that identify how to format the date. And this one will give you an ISO 8601. If you were to actually do a search, I think if you did a search on PHP, which is a programming language, and timestamp formats, you would see this one listed as the ISO 8601. So I don't know that that format is exactly what Webflow is looking for, but we are going to find out. Because we're going to run it again. And once we get to this point, we're going to go back to our debugger and look at the first call as an example for response. We got a 200, so yay. So let me show you how that looks a little different. There's what we created. Is that that's how Webflow saw it. That's in the response. That's what Webflow sees. If I come into the request, it's buried in here, so we're not going to get, there it is. That's what we're sending instead of that big number that you saw before. So let's go back over to Webflow and go into the blog post and see if we have, what, 5 new ones, I guess is what it would be. Blog post, there they are. And these, as you can see from here up, 2, 3, 4, 5, all published today. And I want to come in and scroll to the bottom. There we go. So I have an original publish date. Now we're going to go back out to the page. And we're going to look at hierarchies. And what we want to do is here, I want to use original publish date. And I'm hoping in doing that, okay, so I get to pick the format. And they disappeared, which is a bummer. Get text, original publish date, format. Dun, dun, dun. Let's try publishing this. Oh, I know what the problem is. I'm being goofy. This is what happens when I try to do no code and talk and think. One of them always falls apart. I'm showing that we're going to use the original publish date, but obviously these two articles did not have original publish dates because they're not the new articles. If I come down here and make the same changes, instead of created on, I'm going to use original publish date, and I believe it had the smaller format. Maybe I can't change the format there. We're going to leave it as is because you can see the dates now because these articles, these first 5, yeah, those articles have dates. These articles do not because they're older ones. Okay. So I think we have that set up. We're going to publish it. So that takes us through, let's see, that takes us through putting the publish date on there. And I think what I want to do, just so that we have clean data with the blog posts, let's go ahead and delete all but one. Go ahead and delete these 12 items. And the reason I want to do that, maybe, yeah, we're going to delete everything because I want to have a new set of articles. Delete that one. Everything's empty. We are going to rerun this. So I'm going to republish those same articles. And then come back to Webflow and refresh and go into the blog post collection. Make sure they're there. It doesn't look promising, but maybe no items. I bet you I have like a duplicate data problem. Okay, let's see what it did. I am really good at failing to call that API correctly. Yeah. So I have to, yeah, that's what I forgot to do. So since I deleted everything, me and Webflow, not always happy with each other. Since I deleted everything, if I go back out here, I did not republish, which means behind the scenes, the slugs for each of those articles that I deleted still exist. So I'll say that with the utmost in confidence, and then we'll rerun this and see if good things happen. It's running. Since we're here, we'll take a look at our response. Tell me there's a 200. I would be really happy. Yay. Okay. So that means when I refresh, we will see actual content with real dates. Yep, that's right. None of them are featured. And here is the 5 articles with real dates. If we want to have them show up here, what we're going to need to do, as you probably remember, is come in and flag them as featured. Actually, I should just do the first 2 so that when I want to turn it off, it's a little easier to remember which ones. Okay. And so there we have those articles, which Technically, they look really bad, but let's get past that for the moment. But while we're here, why don't we at least look at what's going on there? We are going to publish and see what happens. Okie doke. So this just happens to have the text over that. You know, the sad thing is now I don't remember what it looked like before. I'm going to leave that be so that we're not dealing with all the minutia of this. But we successfully do have our images coming. We've got our dates. I need to delete the authors down here as well, because we're not going to do authors. We're just going to have dates. There we go. Okay. So let's move along to, I think, topics. Because we have what were the original themes, Webflow themes topics here, categories as they're called. In Newscatcher API lingo, they're going to be topics. So we're going to create the valid topics in Xano, and we're going to use those to call and get articles that will match those. Let's take a look. Let me walk through that a little bit. So what we're doing right now is adding blog posts that happen to match any search we do. I want to put a little bit more control around which articles we get, which means I want to know for each of these articles which topic. We're going to go back and back. We want to know which topic each article came from. And I think, yeah, I'm going to go with this route. We are going to have a topic field. And this field will also get filled as we get each of the new articles. So there's going to be a number of steps we go through. If you remember, I said Newscatcher had many topics, and these are those topics. So we're going to create a topics table in Xano, and then we're going to put each of these topics in there, because then we are going to loop through the get articles function, and we're going to specify an input that is text that will be topic, because we are going to want to pass this when we do the Newscatcher get articles. We're going to pass in a topic, and what we want to do is when we call the API, we want to add a topic into here. So let's do this a little bit here. So we're going to have to change this to be topic equal, and then we're going to want to put in a variable replacement. We are going to use the sprintf capability, which means I am going to use topic that we're passing in on the input. If I filter on input, so the topic will be passed in, and whenever the sprintf sees this %s for string replacement, it's going to put the topic in there. And then the rest of my Elon Musk, English language, sort by relevancy, first page, send me the images as well, all of that will stay the same. I'm going to save this, and let's make sure it's going to work. We're going to hard code a topic of news. Let's see what we have here. What are my options? Do we dare? Let's do politics. And an error. Okay, invalid parameter count based on format. And that is probably happening in this API call. I've got text, topic, I saved that. Let's see what else I have in here. I wonder, oh, I may be having a problem with sprintf because I have other percents listed, even though they're for spaces and things like that, URL encoded. So this is going to be needing to be done a little bit differently. So I'm going to put it on pause for a sec because I want to see if I can keep it clean without having to do a concatenate and split the URL up. So give me a sec just to take a look at this and figure it out, and I'll be right back. Okay, I think what our problem is, and you'll see a little bit of what I've been working on here, is that in this URL, part of it is URL encoded, which is necessary for it to be used. And the URL encoding is this %20, which, if you look that up, it represents a space in URL encoding, because this, just having a space in a URL, is not valid. So anything you pass to a URL, you need to encode, which is what that one was showing. I'm guessing if I say I just made it Elon that I was searching on, and I still have my %s for topic, you'll see that I did a decode just in case. I'm guessing I could take that out now because I no longer have anything encoded. So let me get rid of this. Now I think, since I have a %s, which the sprintf will replace with the value of topic, and I don't have any URL encoded items in here, this should work just fine, he says confidently. So we're looking for news, and we're going to run. There we go. So that's what my problem is, which means we can't actually just assume that the query will always be friendly to a URL. So we're going to add in more text. We are going to call it query. And we are going to pass that in here. And I'm going to URL encode it. But for now, what it'll look like is a %s. And we'll go into the sprintf and add another item. And we'll say we want our query. But I'm going to add a filter to this. For that string, I want to URL encode it, which means when we run this, let's put, it should work fine with Elon because there's nothing to encode. And it does work fine. We get our articles back. But it should also work correctly if I type in Elon space Musk, because that URL encode that I added should change this to a %20, that little space there. And we should still be fine. And we are. So just to show what that looks like, here in the request, you'll see that the URL encoding put the plus there. %20 and plus, if I were to look that up, I'm guessing that's some interchangeable URL encoding. But we're good now because we have a query that is valid URL structure. So that, as everything else that I've done here, has taken longer than I would expect. But what we've done is we've generalized our get articles to accept a topic and to accept a query, which we needed to do anyway, because you're not always going to want to just search on Elon Musk. And this will allow you to pass in whatever you decide you want to query on. Okay. So that means that every time I run the get articles, successfully, I have been adding them out here. And if you notice, I am also now adding the news topic that was used to find these, meaning that if I come back and rerun this and I do politics, we'll see if we actually, and refresh. There we go. That means I have now recorded the content of the article that we used to put to Webflow. I have the original publish date that we've been using now, and now I have a topic so that I know what it is I searched on for that, which means I'm going to get rid of these because once again, they're bad data and we don't need them anymore. And so now you've got the ability to do searches. Actually, let's just delete everything because that's a whole bunch of stuff to publish all at once. Now I can go back and run this and come refresh and see that I have 5 politics articles, which I can then use to connect it to the category in Webflow. So that's kind of what we're getting to here, is I want to be able to change these to be what Newscatcher allows, and then have Xano search on those topics and associate those categories to each of the articles that we publish.